Thank you for joining us here at the West Valley Center for Spiritual Living. I'm so happy to see everybody's beautiful faces out there. And hi, everybody on Facebook. Welcome. And I just want you all to know that we really love you and we're glad that you're here. I also want you to know that today is the first day of my birthday month, and I am accepting gifts and parties all month long.
All month. Just get started.
That's right. Let's get it started. So we're gonna keep it real short. We're gonna go ahead and say our visioning statement. We are a loving, joy-filled community, honoring the many paths to God as we learn and live the science of mind principles. And so it is. All right, so let's just settle in our seats, take a nice deep breath, and get ready to be centered for this beautiful, beautiful message.
I will make a quiet place within my heart, and I will wait upon the Lord, wait upon the Lord.
Be still, my soul, be still. Be still, my soul, be still. Be still and know.
I will make a quiet place within my mind. I will wait upon the Lord, wait upon the Lord.
Ooh, be still, my soul, be still. Be still, my soul, be still. Be still and know.
I will make a quiet place within my life. I will wait upon the Lord, wait upon the Lord. I will make a quiet place.
In this place where we have come to honor the truth of who we are, that divine which lives and moves and has its being in, through, and as me, in, through, and as each of us, in, through, and as everyone, everywhere. I know that that divine power is the power that is in charge here in this moment and in every moment. That this service is a perfect and beautiful idea in the mind of God. Therefore, it will unfold exactly in that manner. I know that Reverend Karen's message is wide open and delivered through her. As every Sunday, she opens her heart and her mind to the activity of Spirit and provides a message that lifts us and shifts us and gives us yet at least one other piece of information to enhance the truth of who we are. I give thanks for the Bradfords and their beautiful music that lifts our hearts, and to everyone involved with making this service happen, that out of service, our lives are lifted. So as we move forward throughout this day, we do so with that understanding that beauty and joy are indeed a part of our life because that is God. And so it is. So my reading today is from the Science of Mind textbook in really one of the most amazing chapters in the book. It's the general summary. And it is it wraps up many things beautifully. The will of God is always toward that which expresses life and happiness. To suppose that the will of God could be in opposition to the advancement of our lives would be to think spirit as being self-destructive. It is always seeking self-expression through us and will never deny us anything. The universe is one and never two. It refuses to operate against itself. It is foolproof. The spirit cannot be or become antagonistic toward us. It is always flowing into us and ever expressing itself through us. This self-expression of God is also the self-expression of man, for the two are one. The I am is both individual and universal. All individuality merges into universality. All spirits of God is the spirit of man. Allow yourself to feel that understanding that the divine is indeed always present. So it is.
In this moment, in this place, I remember who I am, letting fear and worry fall away from me. I open my eyes and see there is only love. There is only love. Love that heals, love that sets us free. There is only love. When I lose myself, when it seems I've lost my way, when I go inside and quiet my mind, I can hear Spirit gently say, there is only love. There is only love. Love that heals, love that sets us free. There is only love.
That's an old familiar song, but you didn't sing it old and familiar. There's something different about you today. You got some news for us? No? You're in a different place, Kathy. It's really lovely to see that. Yeah, I really love it when we get into that creative place and we just let Spirit sing through us. And that's what I want to talk about today. The title of my message this morning is The Feeling of Yes. So are you ready for a little yesing? Yeah. Good. Good morning. I'm so happy we got all this positive yes in the air today. So the message that I desire to dedicate some time to is about the way the idea of yes creates a posture of acceptance. There's something about the whole idea, and everything I'm going to speak about today is the way that it opens us to be ready to receive. And what do we want to receive? We want to be open to all the divine blessings that are out there moving about in this beautiful universe, and they're ours for the taking, but we need to be the container. We need to be open and ready to receive. And you know what? It is our divine nature to do so. And that will be the emphasis of what we talk about this morning. The quote from Dr. Ernest Holmes is short and sweet. He said, "What matters is the feeling of yes in the mind and the heart." What matters is the feeling of yes in the mind and in the heart. And I took that from a much longer quotation that I posted in my newsletter that comes out weekly, and you get that in the email. And it's a great place in the Jesse Jennings, The Essential Earnest, the book we call The Essential Earnest, where we are addressing that idea of the will of God. Do we say yes to the will of God? Do we understand the meaning of thy will be done? When we can say yes to God's will in our life, it is guaranteed, and the reading was so perfect, so on spot for what I to support everything I'm wanting to say this morning. Then we can really be ready to receive. And I know that idea of thy will be done is a bit of a controversial topic in the science of metaphysics. We are commonly, we misunderstand these words, and that's why I think it's going to be really sort of juicy to talk about it today. We are not a spiritual faith that believes in ignoring the bad stuff that goes on in the world in order to feel better. You know, it's important that we acknowledge that there is suffering in the world. That's what calls forward a greater expression of compassion through us so that we can support each other. And yet, the idea of spiritual grounding in that idea of thy will be done is that there is also a presence that is completely available all the time, no matter what the discord may be. And that's always our call to return to our own center, our own truth, or the remembrance of the divine life that is always ours. I think the best illustration of that, just last night, I was watching something on, I don't know, one of those like Prime or something, I don't know. And it was a documentary. Are you laughing at me? It's like, I don't know. There's a lot, I know. I'm still trying to sort that all out and figure out what I need and what I don't need, because I have a whole new life I'm living here. At any rate, I watched this documentary, which, by the way, I never would have watched that documentary last night had I been in a different life 6 months ago. So I'm all alone. I can watch whatever I want on TV, and I watched this documentary on gardening, and it was about the world's most famous gardens, and it was really beautiful. And there's this woman in, I believe she lives in New York, but she was hired to redesign one of the really famous gardens in New York City. And the gardens happened to be 6 blocks from where the Twin Towers fell. And she said it was really remarkable that for many weeks, even as there was still fire and smoke 6 blocks away in this devastating thing, people came to the gardens to just sit and begin healing. And so there's something beautiful in that incongruence of how a garden can lift our spirits, even as there's crisis going on. 6 blocks away, something really tragic happened. And I believe that serves as a very good illustration of how present God is in all of it. And it's up to us. You know, in many ways, it's a good encouragement that sometimes we have to walk, we have to make a plan to go sit in the garden. Whether that is your morning meditation, a time of contemplation or reflection, or you're physically going out into nature and to have an experience of beauty, because indeed that is where we heal. So the way that we say yes to life, that one of the ways that I say yes to God and yes to life in my own experience of living is by getting up every morning, waking up, and even before my feet touch the floor, I make a decision to be grateful for that new day of life. I have a conversation with Spirit, and I give thanks for that way in which I am, it's not like, oh, another day, guess I'm still here. Guess I'll just figure out what I'm going to wear. It's not like that. It's the opposite of that. It's like seeing the blessing in, wow, I rejoice that I am here today. That means that I have something to do today. And yes, I am here to be used by Spirit. I am here to share my gifts. I am here to say yes to God and yes to life. And I choose to align myself to that big, bold yes. I choose to see good. I choose to do good today. And that's a wonderful way to begin every day. Before you maneuver through your own activities that will call for your attention, it's so gorgeous to be conscious and to make space for God's will to show up in your life. The controversy around that thought of thy will be done, those four potent words, the controversy is that we don't have a view that we are here to be used by God as if we're puppets, and that God is going to put a demand on us to do something we don't want to do, or something that would be really hard for us. It's quite the opposite of that. So there are people, even those who have studied New Thought for many years and have a strong grasp of spiritual principle, and they're wonderful manifestors. Even sometimes people that are really immersed in this faith will have, I'll hear statements that those words, thy will be done, are just a little bit too religious. And I think that that's the problem. We don't realize what we haven't healed from our past, that we would think that something could be too religious for us. It's all in your own interpretation. So in my own personal circumstance, I was a Christian fundamentalist for about 15 years. Didn't get raised that way. I chose that. Hugh and I did that before our marriage. We began dedicating our life in that particular way. And then 15 years later, when I began to feel like it wasn't working anymore, and I made a break from that, he stayed another year. Took him a year to decide so that he would make the break too. But it took me almost a decade before I could open a Bible and find it safe, because I missed studying the Bible, but I would open the Bible and I would read a passage, and I could only hear the interpretation that I had been told to believe. And so that's what I would say. If that statement, thy will be done, is hard for you, let's re-look at it, reevaluate it, heal whatever that is from your past, whether it's a Sunday school teacher or a family you were born in, or just your own strong opinions about religions, bossing people around, whatever that is, because a lot of us that come to New Thought bring that stuff with us. So we're not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. The easiest way for me to wrap my mind around what that means and how I can use thy will be done is when I look at the way we teach in this faith. We teach the 4 stages of consciousness. And very simply put, the first stage, we're all victims sometimes. I can be totally prayed up and bang my foot on the coffee table while I'm getting up for meditation, and I can be in pain and perhaps annoyed and maybe even mad at myself for forgetting the damn leg of the table is there again. whatever that is. So we go back quickly into that victim mentality, but the more we have a strong, dedicated spiritual practice, the less time we spend there. And that's the whole goal. That as we grow, and by the way, you will go through these stages of spiritual consciousness, whether or not you are a spiritual-minded person. It's not that something that our faith created. It's something that comes from the early work of James Fowler and all those other great thinkers and psychologists who studied the stages of spiritual growth. So we start as a victim, and then something happens where we finally realize, oh, I'm so tired of being a victim. I can make choices for my own life, and we feel empowered, and suddenly it no longer feels like everything's happening to me, but I realize that I'm a powerful woman or a man, and I can make choices that will be, choices that work for me. That I'm not a victim. I can redirect my life as I desire. And that then, in this teaching, would be where we discover spiritual mind treatment. And we begin to realize that there's a power greater than we are. We can use it, and so we use it. And we feel greatly empowered, and we begin to change our life by the way we demonstrate responses to those new choices. But you can only do that for so long if you keep growing. If you keep deepening, you will deepen. So we have this diagram of 4 squares, and you start at the bottom and you work your way up to empowerment. But in spiritually speaking, as you advance and mature, you deepen and you drop into that 3rd stage of consciousness, and you have experiences of surrendering to God. That's what happens when we meditate. We let go. We're no longer in treatment. We are directing the law. We are using it intentionally and sometimes pretty specifically. But when we are in that 3rd kingdom, we're no longer attached to doing it our way. Something happens where we have a recognition that, wow, I'm not a victim. I'm pretty powerful as it turns out. But oh my goodness, it's not my power. It's God working through me. And there is a huge shift when that happens. When that happens, the world gets much bigger, and there's a lot more hope for the way that we will move through it. So we're no longer begging God to handle the problems we have in our life because we've figured out how to empower ourselves. But then we drop down and we recognize that in that gorgeous place of surrender, which is that place of knowing thy will be done, means that we understand God's will for us is good. All the beautiful stuff that you read, Sue, from and by the way, she's right. The general summary has a lot of really good stuff it's right in the middle of the textbook. And so everything then begins to shift and move and change. But here's the point. We have to have had moments of feeling like a victim before we can feel empowered. But before we can drop into that surrender, we have to practice living that empowered life, and with intention and positive prayer, affirmative prayer, so that when we finally get to that place of thy will be done, we will understand we can completely trust the process. That there is something that created this universe to work, and we are a part of it, and we have aligned ourselves to it. And then the 4th stage in consciousness is where we recognize, oh, wait, it's not just God working through me, it's God working as me. And that's where and you don't stay there. So it's not a goal. It's not like we're trying to get into that stage of consciousness and we'll be enlightened forever. It's not like that. It's more like we are moving through all 4 of those kingdoms. And you can see here what I'm doing is making that infinity sign, that it is infinite in possibilities, and that's exactly how this all works. We get to a place where we trust that it works. I think of it like this. I learn to take action in my own life. I learn by doing it, I can reverse some of the conditions in my life that I used to just let throw me around, but now I can participate, and I see that there is a way. I have proven to myself that this stuff works, which is the most important thing you could get from any spiritual teaching. It just works. And when I have that level of confidence, I can see that applying spiritual principle in my life not only makes my life more effective, but I am living a more satisfying life, not just for myself, but for all the people that surround me in my experience of living. Now, this becomes more complicated as we look at the global issues in the world. I personally know that I can really be overwhelmed when I look too much at some of the really scary stuff that's unfolding in the world. And so to say, "Thy will be done," does not get you off the hook if you are called to be an activist in some way, to lead a cause for peace, or to just get your hands involved in any of the things on the planet that are upsetting. You will know if you are called. And then if you don't respond to that call, you will suffer. That's what they tell us. And that seems to be pretty apparent, I notice, in my own choices. But what I know is when I'm confident about the way the law works and the way that there's something in this universe that responds to my good intentions, then I'm a little more likely to remember that power greater than I am when the global concerns begin to overwhelm me, because I can trust God. I have developed a greater sense of trust in life. And now, from that perspective, I know that it's not up to me to go out. I belonged to that faith once, but it's not up to me to go out and try and convince you need to come home and believe like I do. You know, you need to find the truth, and I have it. I have the truth. I'm going to give it to you. So saying yes to God's will is really a higher form of yes. And I want to talk for a minute about Dr. Ernest Holmes' take on all of this. So Holmes, I love him. What a great path I've chosen, because I never get tired of all of our basic groundings and teachings. I love everybody he studied, and I love dabbling in all of it over and over. I consider Dr. Holmes a pretty good authority on all things metaphysical, and he spoke, as Sue shared with us, "Thy will be done," he's telling us, is not a way we give up our own authority. Thy will be done is not a form of submission that makes our life limited because because we have to do things in a religious sort of way. It's different than that. And in our textbook, page 268, man, it's one of my favorite chapters. He says this: "Thy will be done." To say "thy will be done," it is a knowledge that the will of God for us is always good. You said the same thing in a slightly different way. It's when we recognize, we finally get it. It's like, oh, wait, God wouldn't will for me to do anything that wouldn't be for the highest interest of everybody. And then he goes on to say that, well, actually, I didn't set myself up well for that. Yes, thy will be done. It's always good if it's God's will. And that's why, this is the part I left out, that's why the model prayer that Jesus left in the book of Matthew, the model prayer says, "Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." And now think about that. Heaven is a state of mind. In fact, I looked up, he says it's a state of mind of goodness, of goodness, which would be easy for us to know. But when I looked up in the glossary in the very back of the Science of Mind textbook is this gorgeous dictionary that Holmes wrote. The first sentence he says in under heaven is a state of happiness. A state of happiness. And then he goes on and expands it in great detail. So it's not a place. It's not something you have to earn or wait for. It is something that occurs naturally as the result of our own conviction. So the greater we nurture our faith, in other words, test this stuff out and see if it works in your life. You can't go wrong. The greater we prove it to ourselves, the more it deepens our firm conviction to align ourselves to it, and then we can be in heaven more often. I like that. There's that on earth as it is in heaven. So it's an experience that we can yearn for while we are on earth, and Jesus said to pray for it. Pray then this way. There's another scriptural passage that I just couldn't help but think of when I was doing this work. That one that says we abide in the Father and the Father abides in us. So what does that mean? We abide in God in spirit, and spirit abides in us. This is key for any New Thought teaching because we have a real strong emphasis on the spirit, God within. The indwelling presence of God. Well, abiding is, one of the words was remaining. It remains in me, but I like even better that the word abide comes from the same root as abode. It is a home, that we are at home in that truth, and then that truth is at home in us. So, as I choose to live in harmony, let's look at some of these God qualities. Harmony or peace or wisdom. As I choose to nurture those divine qualities and I live in those divine qualities, that intent to live in them, then they become alive in me. And you can't help then but see the goodness of life around you because you are living in it, living in God, making God alive in those very specific qualities. If I groom my thinking, if my thoughts are friendly and happy and confident, then I'm making that the home I live in, and that those qualities will just exude from me wherever I go. People will recognize that I'm a friend. People will recognize that confidence and, again, that joy. So it's how we show up in the world. When we are open, when we are loving, and we let those things be alive in us, then we are living in the kingdom of heaven. And that's a good place to live. That is yes, thank you. That is a really good place to live. The rent's cheap. And the amenities are 5-star, all the way. 7-star, okay, there's more stars now. You get the point. So when we feel comfortable to have that kind of a yes to the goodness that the creator of life intended for us to experience. It doesn't mean we won't experience discord, but we just say yes to just work on 1 or 2 qualities a day and carry those with you as you move through your day. You will have a different kind of a day because you will be living in the kingdom of heaven. And by the way, just as Holmes defined heaven as a state of happiness, he also wrote that hell is a state of mind of discord, that the discord is the hell. And he wrote this: hell happens when we believe that our good is always just a little bit ahead of us, but not quite ours. That's really There's some depth in that statement. Do not take that lightly. Hell happens when we always believe our good is just a little bit ahead of us. It's coming, it's coming. And we don't recognize that it's right in front of us. I love that image of people praying and meditating in that garden 6 blocks from where the tragedy unfolded. God is right where we are. In fact, that whole idea that we're never quite there, that maybe that good is just a little bit ahead of us, it sounds so religious. It reminds me of that way I always felt like I was never quite good enough, that there was always something I had to ask God to forgive, and that I always should have been a little bit better than I was. Reminds me of a story of a Christian missionary. It's this Christian missionary, a young man. Boy, that was hard to say. I did it twice. Young man is new as a missionary, and he's really zealous, how that can be. And he hears of an island in the South Pacific where they believe no civilized people have ever visited before, and he thinks, oh, this is a prime place. I'm going to go there, and I'm going to teach these people about Jesus. And so he does. It's a long trip, and he finds his way there, and he lands on the island. It's not a really big island, but he spends time with the people, and he's got to spend time. He's got to get to know them. He's got to figure them out. They've got to find a way to communicate. And so he's not in a hurry, and as time passes, he's able to start teaching them about Jesus and about God and about sin and all the things that he's there to teach them, things they need to know. So a couple of years pass, and now he's done his good work. They know all about Jesus and God and sin, and he's going to move on, because surely there's another island somewhere that needs a good Christian missionary. And they're on the beach, and they're saying their goodbyes, and the king of the tribe comes up to the missionary, and he says, before you go, I just have one question. There's something I haven't quite figured out yet. Before you came, I didn't know anything about God. I didn't know anything about Jesus, and I didn't know anything about sin, and I wasn't going to hell. Now, he says, is that true? And the missionary goes, why, yes, that is true. You can't be held responsible for what you don't know. And so the king says, well, now that you've told me about Jesus and about God and about sin, if I don't believe what you say, am I going to go to hell? And the missionary says, yes, that's exactly how it works. And so the king says to him, well, then why on earth did you bother to tell me? I do think that it's possible we do some funny things in the name of good. I think that all of us sometimes show up like the missionary, and we have good intentions. We're going to learn the language, how that person thinks, what matters to them, and then we're going to give them the good news. But in our effort to do this good and to serve, that person clearly thought it was the will of God, as all missionaries do. We point out the bad instead of really sharing what's good, what the good news really is. And like that missionary, in the name of heaven, we've preached about hell. And I think that we do that sometimes without wanting to, just in those overwhelming concerns about everything that's not working in the world. So be attentive to that. Do you spend more time in that negative space than you do looking for the garden, even with the fire and the smoke just down the block? We want to choose love, and we want to choose peace, and we can make those choices now, because the kingdom of heaven is a good place to live. I mean, come on, harmony and peace and open, loving, confident, and happy. I choose heaven. I say yes to life, and the way we say yes to life is by accepting those qualities into our life, inviting them into our life, practicing what it feels like when you don't feel harmonious and you don't feel loving or peaceful. Let's practice again so that we can refresh our mind and feel that yes within our own being. You see, great things come from divine guidance. And for me, that's what that is, to drop down into that third kingdom, that third stage of consciousness, is to open myself to that divine guidance so that I know right where I am, wherever I'm going, always is the peace of God, always is the harmony, always is the beauty. And in that way, I'm doing my work to help make the world a better place. That's God's will. Trust that divine guidance. Because when you do, you are adding a little more peace to the planet. And as I like to say, it never hurts. We are waking up in the spiritual path. It's about waking up to the divine presence, becoming more and more clear of the divine presence. And so imagine, so that I just imagine you have a sitting practice every day, and you're stirring up the energy of love and peace and trusting in the will of God to be good, and that you're creating an energetic in your own body as to how you're going to move around the rest of the day. You're going to carry that energy with you. But imagine if 1 million other people did it at exactly the same time as you. And imagine that 10 million people were sitting at exactly that same time, thinking and feeling and saying yes to God, saying yes to that harmonizing influence that's perfect, saying yes to the joy and the happiness that we all desire, saying yes to just being open and being a good friend and showing up in life in a positive way. Imagine how much peace would be on the planet then, because that's how it gets here, through us. That much peace and love would change the vibration of the entire planet. It would encircle us in an energy that would be that brilliant white light of truth and love and joy. And in the course of human history, it would be the greatest influence for good that the world has ever known. And I know this is hard to hear sometimes because things look bleak, but I believe that there's a whole bunch of us that are doing that. And as we do it, it makes it a little bit easier for the people we pass by to then just kind of feel that different vibration and open themselves to a different experience. That's why, you know how you hear those stories, and I know many of you have had this experience. Like you go to Starbucks and you're waiting in line and you find out that the guy in the car before you paid for your order. Right? And then that makes you feel good, and then you do something else. We pass it, how do you say it? Pass it forward? Pay it forward. We pay it forward because we can't help but pay it forward. It doesn't mean that you got to pay for somebody's Starbucks. It means that you're in a better mood, and you're going to do something that you wouldn't have done with such love and such kindness later. So that we know that it feels good, and we desire to be in that space. We want to continue to choose love and to say yes to God. I know there's a lot of discord in the world. I'm not denying that fact. I have been accused of that, but I am not that person. I am not afraid to dabble in the dark side, which I think is part of my success in my recent personal work. Here's something that Gandhi said that I want to leave you with that talks about the discord in the world in a very honest way. He was giving a speech on peace, and in the speech, he gave this advice in relationship to prayer. When I despair, I remember that all through history, the way of truth and love has always won. There have been tyrants and murderers, and for a time they can seem invincible. But in the end, they always fall. Think of it. Always. The words of Gandhi. Let us take everything said this morning and harmonize with heaven. Let us be in agreement with life, not against it, not out trying to fix all the bad stuff we see. Let's be in agreement with the goodness of life and let that be the way we show up in the world. We are for it. I don't have to fix the world, but I have to be able to see what is working. I have to be able to sit in the garden and know that there is a presence and a power, and it's there for us. Because all that matters, the only thing that matters, is that feeling of yes. Thanks. Yes, yes, yes. And so now is the time where we anchor these precious ideas in the words of prayer. Gently become aware of the movement of love in this room, right where you are, wherever you may be. Put your attention on love. Feel it within you, for it is indeed the activity of life that breathes us, sustains us. But let us as well begin to sense the movement of love right here, swirling, moving, allowing us to feel the arms of God supporting us in the same way that the chair supports us as we sit quietly. Feel the love of God and know that it is the most powerful force in the universe. And in this way that we begin to feel that beauty and that goodness, the harmonizing effect of that love. This is the way that we feel our yes in our very being. This is the way that we open ourselves to be ready to receive. And so, even as these powerful words of prayer are spoken this morning, I know that they vibrate out into the rippling out into the world, that they touch us. The vibration of good, the vibration of healing touches each and every person within the sound of these words, so that there is something activated in the very innermost part of our being that allows us to be that vessel to receive, to be aware, to recognize that good is right here. So we breathe that in, that beautiful eternal truth, that there is that healing force in the universe that is the revealing of our wholeness, that we have never separated from our good, that no matter what the appearances are in the situations in our lives or in the world, that still there too abides the eternal presence of God as we abide in it. I feel that love of God, and I sense that it is like that bright golden light of truth that guides us, that directs us and supports us fully In the same way that the rain falls on the flowers and the birds soar through the sky without moving their wings as they glide, in the same way that blades of grass just grow through cracks in concrete, we can see that there is something very insistent on the part of life, that it is eternal, that it continues, and that it thrives. And so this day we find our place to stand, to ground ourselves in the truth that is uniquely ours, so that we might thrive, that we might be aware of the way in which Spirit is always just pouring the grace of life itself. All the beautiful grace just flows into our lives and we receive. We breathe it in. We become aware of the movement of life within us. We are healed from anything that appears to ail us, and our relationships are healed because they are coated in God's perfect love. So I say thank you, God. Thank you, life. Thank you, infinite Spirit. How wonderful it is to know that there is a power for good in this universe. And when we feel overwhelmed, we can surrender and trust that thy will be done will be the very impotence for Spirit to allow that flow of good to just stream into the lives of all those who are needing, yearning, waiting for the truth to be apparent in their own mind. I pronounce that this is good. I release these words into that law, knowing it is already done. And together we say, and so it is. Amen. Amen.
Grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have. I am so grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have. Everywhere I look and every face I see is love reflected, shining back to me. I just give thanks for all these simple things, the joy and peace that gratitude brings. That's why I'm grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have. I am so grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have.
Thank you, Bradfords. I'm certainly grateful for you.
Thank you.
Without question. It's always a great day when you're here.
Thank you.
And grateful for Reverend Karen. That was a fabulous message. Thank you. So it is time for us to acknowledge our blessings and our good, and we'll say the joyful giving statement with me, if you would. I live in a consciousness of good. Divine love blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, God. And so it is. And I'm just going to give you a little announcement. We have something exciting that's coming back to us. We are going to have Dining with the Dudes next week. And that is so exciting. You know, we are opening our hearts and our lives and our opportunities to have the best of the things that we've missed begin to return. So join us next week for Dining with the Dudes. They should be, as always, fabulous. And so thank you very much.
Ready?
Please rise for our last song. my problems. I'm living now. I'm living now. And I ain't gonna worry about the future. I'm living now. I'm living now. So put your hands up if you feel like having a good time. Put your hands up if you're sharing love with all. Raise your cup if you're hopeful for tomorrow. Put your hands up if you're ready to have some fun. Now sing with me. Oh, 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 it feels so good to be alive. Oh, 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 it feels so good to be alive. Feels good, don't it? Feels good, don't it? Only got one life, live in the moment. Feels good, don't it? Feels good, don't it? Only got one life, live in the moment. Feels good, don't it? Feels good, don't it? Only got one life, live in the moment. Feels good, don't it? Feels good, don't it? Only got one life, live. Oh, 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 it feels so good to be alive. Oh, 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 it feels so good to be alive. One more time. Oh, 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 it feels so good to be alive. Woo.
All righty, I think we should do our good old favorite closing affirmation. If I forget, you're going to have to help me out here, okay? Something wonderful is happening through me right now.
Something wonderful is happening through me right now.
It is this thing called life.
It is this thing called life.
Life is in my mind.
Life is in my mind.
Life is in my body.
Life is in my body.
And life is in all my affairs.
Life is in all my affairs.
I think it.
I think it.
I feel it.
I feel it.
I know it.
I know it.
And I accept it.
I accept it
Just the way that it is.
just the way that it is.
And just the way that it is not.
Just
Thank you, life. Amen. Have a blessed week. Pray often, love much. Thanks for being here.